Good evening, treasure seekers. This is Blake coming to you live from New Mexico, and joining me as always from Washington State, it's Brent and Cody. How's it going, guys?
Team blue, team blue. Last time in our yellow and black, we were Pikachus. So now we're all Froakies and Greninjas.
Just like
that's all. Right. That's my witty answer. I'm doing well. Had a nice weekend. How are you, Blake?
Good. Yeah, also had a nice weekend. Pretty busy, but I got to do some treasure hunting today, so I'm excited.
Nice. On which box were you working on?
I was mostly working on Dr. Krypton, who we're going to talk about first thing off. Spoilers. So anyway, I have a lot of commentary about that as well. So anyway, if you like Blake rants, get ready.
Oh boy, those are my favorite segments of the Blake rants.
Does it need its own special? What do they call that in
a drop?
A sizzle?
Sizzle.
What do you?
Yeah, something like that.
Whatever. You need your own sound effect.
Yeah. All right, Rashawn, get on it.
Blake rant.
Blake rant. There, you can record that and send it back to us. All right. Should we just get started? I don't know if this is going to be a long episode or not. Well, we will find out together.
Well, my spidey senses are telling me it's going to be a longer one.
All right, we'll see what happens.
Let's at least preface this with news.
News. You want to give the news, Bryn?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, let's start with the shorter piece of news.
Then I'll give that one. That's my fault.
Okay.
Sorry. So there is a new interview coming out tonight at some point with Treasure Hunt with Us, who is going to be interviewing Jon Collins-Black. So that's Emma and Jam, is that right? Emma and Jam.
Jam for sure. I guess I can't remember her name. Emma sounds right.
I think that's correct. Emma and Jam. They will be interviewing Jon Collins-Black, so please be on the lookout. If this episode drops after the interview gets posted, we will provide a link below. Otherwise, we will provide the link below as soon as that interview drops, so everyone has easy access to it. So be sure to check that out. Not quite sure if it's going to be a similar format. It sounded like they also had some pre-screened questions that they've sent along, so similar to our experience interviewing Jon Collins-Black. So excited to hear what questions they're going to ask and if we get some good nuggets out of that interview.
Yeah, I'm excited because I think at this point, I know like when we interviewed him, we did our best to ask original questions that had not been asked before. And so I would imagine that they're taking a similar approach, trying to get something original out of him. So
yeah.
I'm excited to see what questions they came up with and obviously what his responses are. So yeah, anytime we can get some original JCB content, that is super exciting. And congratulations to them on the big get. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think I'm assuming they're going to ask some really great questions. So anticipation builds for me. All right. Do you want to do the second piece of news, Bryn?
Yes. Okay. So the second piece of news that we will be discussing, sounds like quite thoroughly, is Dr. Krypton, who you may be familiar with his YouTube channel. I believe it's all focused on Past and Future Box. He released a full solve for the Past and Future Box. Well, he has a full solve that he went boots on the ground for this past weekend. He reported back just shortly ago that he is empty-handed. He did not find it. But he has his full solve, and he released part 1 of this full solve as an Apple ebook. So there's 3 parts. He's saying that there was 3 layers to the solve. And this first section that he released was what he is calling round one. It, I think, is 119 pages. This is ebook, and I forget what I was originally going with that train of thought. Anyways, so it's basically walking through step by step everything that he did to like set the foundation for his solve, and then going through layer by layer of how he then has translated that into completing round one within his solve. I feel like I just missed or skipped over something significant. What did I miss?
Did you mention he was charging money for it?
$9.99.
$9.99. Yeah.
Paid $10 to read part one. I was not disappointed. I think I am happy with that $10 that I spent. I think it was I got my $10 worth.
I also spent $10 and enjoyed it.
Upon Bryn's recommendation, if that's the right word.
Yeah, and for everybody out there, if you want to check out, and we will also post a link to it down below, the ebook, you can get a very large sample of it. It's almost like half of the book you can read as a sample to see if you want to invest the $10 to read the second part of part one of a 3-part series. Anyway,
The trilogy.
The trilogy. Yeah, so Dr. Krypton is a little bit confusing because if you search for Dr. Krypton, let's say on Google, you're going to find references mainly to a gentleman named Paul Hoffman, who was the original Dr. Krypton, who he was most famous, I would say, for designing, and most famous in the treasure hunting community, for designing the quest for the Golden Horse treasure hunt that happened in the 80s. So we've talked about this briefly before. This was a golden horse that I believe had a check for $500,000 inside of it that was hidden somewhere in the United States. It was never found. I think it was a time-limited treasure hunt. So after, I think, 5 years, whoever sponsored the treasure hunt went and collected it. So I don't think it's out there anymore. There is some interesting commentary online about potential solves that you're welcome to look up. So that was the original Dr. Krypton. This is a different Dr. Krypton. And he kind of explains himself in the ebook, and you can read this in the sample section as well. He said, "I adopted the name Dr. Krypton for anonymity, but also as a tribute to the original mastermind behind it, Paul Hoffman, whose ingenious puzzle designs sparked my fascination with mystery, logic, and lateral thinking." So he's fully admitting that he's using the Dr. Krypton name based off the original Dr. Krypton. So those are two different people. It took me a little bit of research to figure that out, since this person goes by Dr. Krypton on the Discord channels as well. So I think a lot of people run into the same problem when they see Dr. Krypton, because he does produce a lot of content both on YouTube and in the Discord channel. When you see that name, you're like, ooh, that's interesting, and Google him, and then this Paul Hoffman guy comes up. He's like, oh, this is a famous treasure hunt designer. But the Dr. Krypton we're dealing with currently is not the famous one. That's just the screen name that he's using. So two different people. Okay. All right. Let's talk about this book called Round One Complete. Bryn, you really like this approach. Is that correct?
I would say my overall stance was that going through it step by step, I really like how he laid out kind of what the foundation of all the clues was that he was going to be building off of. So, I mean, first of all, he goes through and solves like the word search, finds all the words, forwards, backwards, diagonal. I mean, does all that upfront work that the community has done and agrees upon. A couple different nuances. I know, like, there's these outlier words, so he talks through his methodology of why he keeps some and eliminates others. I feel like he has, sound logic in what he's doing. He goes through and solves the anagram message. And I guess as I was going through everything, keeping in mind this was like 120 pages, I felt like these layers upon layers, to me, felt like they were building in a pretty fairly logical way. I don't think he created anything that was absolutely just like outlandish as far as like unique rules that he was creating himself. I think every step that he was taking, he justified in a way that was logical to his approach. And I guess overall, I just was like, he made a series of his actions come together in a way that made sense, that was on theme with the chapter, I guess I should say. Each layer was felt to me like it was on theme with the chapter. And it just felt like too many coincidences to build upon itself over 120 pages, where I was like, I need someone to explain to me why this isn't the solve, because the way he presents it, it's like all these just build on each other in a way that just can't be coincidence upon coincidence upon coincidence. And so I think there's a lot of things I really liked because of that. Overall, I think I've said overall so many times now, but I'm like, if this is the solve and this is part one of a 3-part solve, like I'm out. There's no way I can solve anything else in the book if this is the solve. Way too difficult. Way too difficult. And maybe difficult isn't the right word. I wouldn't even say abstract, because the way he's approaching it, complex, it just feels like it's too, you would have to be too clever. You'd have to be, it's just too difficult for someone to get to that solve, where I could see, like if this was the solve and he got to it, fair. But I don't think there could be that many people that would ever be able to do that for other boxes as well. Like, it doesn't feel it. And if this was the solve and it was revealed as the solve, I think so many people would also be out. So because of that reason, I don't think it can be the solve, because it would just simply be too discouraging. I know I would just be like, well, there's no way I'm on the right path for Pokemon box. I can't wrap my head around all these things.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, it was an amazing, truly amazing series of coincidences, I would say. And I need you guys to explain to me why this is not correct.
Yeah. And I think maybe part of the reason why it feels so complex, or like such an incredible number of coincidences, is because a lot of the methods he's using lend themselves to kind of create what you want. And there's kind of an infinite number of solutions he could have come to. And so he's just keeps picking from a series of different infinite numbers of solutions. It feels like, wow, the road to get here was such a coincidence to land here. And it's like, well, statistically it was, because there were no guardrails kind of where there was really like
yeah. But like everything that he's doing is still within like his, like what he calls the base, like the game board. Like at some point I'm like, nothing is that drastically changing for him to be able to create these things, even if they were something that he fabricated himself. The fact that he was able to make all these things work within this original game board is what blows my mind. Yeah. Even if it's not right, it's like, kudos to him for being able to make these things happen in a way that aligns with the chapter theme to get to an answer.
He certainly put a lot of work into it. I also think he did a really good job writing the book and kind of building a narrative. And I think that's a lot of the reason why it feels so, probably felt so fluid in your mind, and like, oh, this is such a natural path for him to have gone down, is because he did a really good job of packaging up kind of some questionable methods into a narrative that, like you said, does fit the theme really well. And, you know, we're big theme people. So I think that's another reason why it was well written. good layout, all that kind of stuff, good design.
When
It's
I liked,
probably I'm not a
I think,
huge I'm full disclosure, I think I'm opposite of Bryn on this. And then a little bit of backstory. The reason that Blake got drug into it is because Bryn originally got very excited about the book and was reading the book and was even like tracking the release of the book. And then I read the book and we had differing opinions. And then we had a 30-minute drive to Costco in which my choices are either let's talk about how great the Dr. Krypton book is,
no, no,
or
no,
I'm wrong.
no, no,
So we
no,
had to call Blake and have him
no.
give a second opinion.
I'm out. The issue was I had read the full book. You had
I'd read a lot of it.
you skimmed the free preview. And so I just felt like I wanted to have a conversation with somebody who had read the full material like I had, and to be able to tell me why things are not correct, or just their other thoughts.
Brainstorming, yeah. So yeah, I got a call.
I just wanted to hear other interpretations.
I got a call. And at that point, I was made aware of the ebook. I was aware of Dr. Krypton's videos. I've probably watched half to 2/3 of his videos on YouTube, and I highly recommend people check them out to make their own decisions. But from my experience with the videos, I was already kind of out on Dr. Krypton based on some of his methodologies. That being said, there are things that I like and things that are interesting, certainly with his approaches. And then at that point, I've read the book, and now we're having a discussion. So I've read the whole thing. Obviously, we're not going to cover 120 pages worth of content. I guess going back to your original commentary, Bryn, don't be upset at me if it's too easy. That is not conducive to, let's say, all 3 ebooks are the same size. That's going to be a 400-page solve.
No, correct. Okay. I want to say, I don't think this is the solve.
Okay.
And upon completing it, I also did not want to think it was the solve for this reason. Too complex. It doesn't check out. There's no way normal people can do this. But I just needed someone to explain to me why it was not, because he presented his evidence in such a logical, good way.
Yeah.
A logical, good way.
Perfect English.
I thought it was presented very nicely.
It is.
So I just needed someone to tell me the counter arguments.
It is. So I have a list. I have a list of things I like and don't like, and things that are interesting. Definitely one of the things I like is the detail and the way that this information is laid out. So I highly recommend everybody at least check out the free sample, because that covers through the word search to a lot of people's boards, word search boards at this point, and the community consensus, I would say. And it's laid out super well. So if you're starting in the word search, or even if you've been doing the past and future box for a while, like, it's 100% worth checking out the sample part of the book, because it covers very logically, I think, a community accepted solve of the word search, with caveats, as you said, Bryn. But I think it's very well laid out. So in terms of presentation, like, very good. We mentioned Dr. Krypton in our YouTube video about the past and future box. When I mentioned him, along with some other content creators, I gave the caveat, if you don't think we did a deep enough dive into the word search, check out Dr. Krypton's videos, and now check out Dr. Krypton's book if you really want to go down a rabbit hole. But yeah, the organization and the way it's written and presented, it's 120 pages, but it's a lot of figures and things. It's not just text. It's not a wall of text by any means. So it's very digestible. You can get through it fairly reasonably timed. There's also these logos that he's put in the book, the 3 different colors based on what part of the solve the particular clue goes into, whether it's part 1, part 2, or part 3, or as he's calling it, round 1, round 2, round 3. So I think that's helpful once you get the full collection of books. if you get the full collection of books. But those are some of the things that I like about it. I think it's worthwhile to maybe go into my slideshow now just to talk about kind of maybe the more controversial parts of his solving techniques, and maybe then you'll have some other evidence to think about Bryn, and we can continue the discussion. How does that sound?
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm going to share my PowerPoint. It's just a few slides, but I wanted to give an example because in my mind, I'm like, the way he's doing this, you can get anything out of this word search, which is what Cody's arguing. So I wanted to see whether or not I could get anything out of this word search using the techniques that Dr. Krypton is using. Oh, you did? Okay, so
I got one queued up too. If
you do, okay. So let's start. How am I going to do this? Share. Presentation 1. So I haven't even saved this file yet, Bryn. So I did this about 45 minutes before the podcast to see how fast I could come up with some solutions. All right. So one of the main things he works on in his solve is this concept of war games. And I will admit, same as Bryn, the way that he links different 80s references that are directly referenced in the past and future box is very good to the solutions that he's putting out for this solve. So that's definitely a bonus compared to a lot of solves that we see for past and future box. This one is definitely strong in the sense that he's using the content of the chapter to manipulate the word search in interesting ways. So one of the keys to his solve is this war game solve, which is making a tic-tac-toe board. I'm not showing it here. It's part of the ebook if you want to check it out, where he has 2 columns that he's highlighted and 2 rows that make a tic-tac-toe board. And then each of those columns and each of those rows, he anagrams out into a message that seems to match one of the references, whether it's Monty Python and the Holy Grail, whether it's Pac-Man, whether it's Ready Player One, and a variety of other things. Dungeons and Dragons. I know I'm missing a couple, but Adventure, Zork, things like that. So he anagrams those to meanings that seem to make sense. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to try taking a random row, not one that he solved, but a different one, to see if I could get a message out of that as well, using an anagram technique. So the first row I'm using is row 6. He has reasons in the book for choosing the rows and columns that he does, in that they avoid the O's that are the blocker O's, quote unquote, the 19 O's that aren't used in kind of the community solve board. So I do like that. So in my case, I chose a row that had O's in it, full disclosure, but I just wanted to choose one fairly randomly. This is the first attempt that I made at this. So just quickly anagramming this out with our Bolter's anagram solver, which is an iterative anagram solver you can find online. One we've recommended a couple of times now. Basically what you can do is you can put in your starting letters and then start choosing words. When you choose a word, it redoes the anagram with the remaining letters, and then you can get a message out of that. So this was my first attempt. I got a stone onion toy tale. And so in my mind, a stone onion is something referencing stone soup. The classic children's story, Stone Soup. And then lo and behold, to try to connect that to one of the themes of the chapters, there's actually this dungeon crawl Stone Soup computer game, which reminds me of Dungeons and Dragons. So that's my first attempt. It's not very good. So 1 point, Dr. Krypton.
Add it as an addendum to his book.
No. I don't think this is worthy of a solve. All right. My next attempt was to try column E. And this one gave me KBT, theft persona. So this one was a bit more interesting. A theft persona certainly would make me think about Dungeons and Dragons. Because you could be a thief class in Dungeons and Dragons, and that would be maybe a theft persona. So
A
what
rogue.
what about KBT? Any guesses? Because he also has these random letters that show up in his messages that he tries to deconflict and give meaning to.
Yes,
I guess
100% he does.
I would say yes, he has the random letters, but I would say his explanations for them
Yes.
felt pretty good.
Yes.
But I think that's more, he's a good storyteller more than any actual like, connection to the puzzle itself.
So let me continue. So I thought that KBT might be KB Toys, which was a famous toy store in the 80s. And so when I Googled KB Toys and Dungeons and Dragons, there's this ad for a Dungeons and Dragons book that you could buy at KB Toys. So then when I Googled in the world of when I Googled famous thieves in Dungeons and Dragons, I got this from the Google AI. A few names that popped out here. The one that really popped out is Artemis, because Artemis is one of the characters in Ready Player One. And so then what Dr. Krypton says is whenever you find a clue, there's always a confirmer that you can boggle nearby it. Is that fairly true, Bryn, in your understanding?
Yep. Correct.
And I think a lot of people don't like Boggle, including myself. So what I wanted to do is confirm that there's this Dungeons and Dragons thief nearby this column. And so what I've done here is I've shown that there is Artemis, Artemis, yes, in blue here. And then typically what he does is he looks at the surrounding characters and does another anagram. So the anagram I got out of this was send up a Titan NV. So in my mind, that means let's launch a rocket in Nevada. And sure enough, we can think about the Las Vegas spaceport. And in addition, we have a nice pictogram. So he does a lot of work with looking at these pixels and making shapes out of them, which is one of my least favorite parts. I won't lie. There's a number of them that he talks about in his ebook, a horse or a dragon, depending on how you look at it. The killer bunny from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And so I have my own pictogram, which uses these O's very nicely to show either this tower or a rocket being shot up. That's the end of my TED Talk. So I did this in about 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's the big takeaway, right? Is like the Dr. Krypton's clearly spent a lot of time, put a lot of effort into doing what he's done. And I think that the key here is that the fact that you were able to do this in 20 minutes, it's like clearly you can create something on the level of what Dr. Krypton created without any real connections to reality.
Right.
When you invest that much time and energy into it.
My mind is blown that you were just able to do that. Like, I guess I personally could not believe that there could just be that thread of coincidence in what he was finding. And the fact that you just did that, very much, thank you. This is what I was looking for. I just needed someone to tell me I don't need to panic, and this is not what we need to be doing to solve this many layers of complexity.
Right.
Mine was not nearly as elegant. I spent literally probably 3 minutes in Notepad just prior to hitting record on this episode, trying to like figure out how I was going to try and explain to Bryn my thought on it. So I just typed in, basically it was showing, I was going to try and show how you can anagram something like the way he anagrams it and then connect it to something else that was another one of his thought processes. Mm-hmm. So we know he's creating these like little, I gave myself the letters. This is an example.
Okay.
And then I anagrammed it to just by hand in 3 minutes. A in the pixel mass. Because I figure he makes these little pixel art drawings. And then his next step, he would say like, okay, I anagram this to A in the pixel mass. And then he takes the A's in any of his little drawings and away he goes on the next step.
Right.
So that was my feeble attempt at basically same thought process as Blake's is much more elegant.
Thanks. Yeah, and this is not meant to be a pile on here. Like, I don't want to discount any solves. I don't think I have discounted any solves that I've seen that I've spent time on. Like, there is a very small chance that this is correct, but I think it's a very small chance.
The funniest thing, sorry, go ahead.
I think the main, just the gut reaction to a Dr. Krypton type solve is there's too many uses of each letter in the word search that I feel it would be impossible for Jon Collins-Black to have designed it with that level of elegance in the time that he had. He was doing 5 box solves in about 2 years. And to me, maybe you could get this level of complexity of the level that Dr. Krypton is talking about if he maybe had only this box to hide in 2 years. I think it might be possible, but I think in the time allotted, I think it's impossible in my mind.
I'm very happy to hear that. I will continue with the treasure hunt.
You're ready to throw in the towel if Dr. Krypton came back with the treasure.
That's why I saw on Discord that Dr. Krypton was heading out to look for the box, and I was on the edge of my seat all weekend. I'm not kidding. I was just waiting for him to post a picture with this box, and I was just going to be out. That was going to be it.
Yeah.
I'd like to have more thoughts on just like even just the statistics of conceptually the statistics of kind of the Dr. Krypton solve and what it would actually take.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't want to pile on. I will say one thing that I found interesting is that you made note that one of your least favorite things was the little pixel art drawings that he created.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like my one note was going to be like, that was my one takeaway that I hadn't thought of that I kind of liked. And I don't like the idea of there being like multiple, but I do kind of like the idea of it, like there hasn't been a whole lot found in the word search yet.
Yes.
And I do like the idea, and I haven't been looking for, if there is a way to more logically shift things around, and then you get probably one piece of pixel art that's like clear enough that it's obvious what it is. That's something that I would be keeping an eye out for in the future.
I agree.
But yeah, definitely not like a handful of different, very abstract ones.
Because again, like pixel art on theme with the chapter. And then also weaving, tapestry. It's like there's just so many threads connected that I do like so many of these threads that he's pulling. And there were a lot of things that we also talked about on the podcast. So that was very reassuring as well. I will say overall, I was very pleased with how on theme with the chapter it was. And I think a lot of people can take little tidbits from that. Obviously, we could be wrong. Maybe the themes are not as strong as we think that they are. But when you read a solve with these themes integrated, I feel like it really adds to the legitimacy of it, of like why it feels like it could be correct.
Yeah, I think one thing that irks me a little bit, and it's not just Dr. Krypton, and it's just personality, right? I think in this format, our podcast, I will guess and say that we try to say everything without a lot of confidence, right? Like we are very open to whatever we're talking about being right or wrong, if it's our types of solves. And there are some of our content is in that book. So the Lilac, Pac-Man Lilac Cipher Try 19, that was from our podcast. I think even when we presented that, it's still with a high level of skepticism. I'd have to go back and watch, but I don't think we ever say anything that's like, this is this. The part that irks me is when Dr. Krypton in this book says, you can certainly stop searching California now. I can tell you that. With, like, he doesn't say with certainty, but it's written with certainty. And it's like, just take your foot off the gas a little bit. If this book were written in language that was saying, I posit, I think, this is possible, but it's not. There's only a couple instances where he thinks, maybe this is not right, but it got me to this solution. And this is the solution. It just is not appealing to me to be so certain of something like this. And certainly he's put in so much effort into this, and it shows. And I think the danger we run into as our group of being skeptical is we never go boots on the ground, right? Because we're always like second guessing. So there's a happy medium in there somewhere. So certainly we are not the models of that either, in that we do need to like make a decision and go out at some point. But on the other hand, just stating all of these solves as facts is a little ridiculous to me.
I will say, so for me, like boots on the ground threshold, I want to feel like when I go to this place, I want to feel like I very much have a legitimate shot at picking up the treasure and going home.
Mm-hmm.
So for that to happen, I have to be very confident myself. I won't be necessarily convinced that is 100% it, but I can see how, like, in this level of detail and confidence for him to have published these ebooks and for how long and how much time he's put into it, I could see where to him, he is like, this is it. This is the solve, just based off of like the time and effort put into it, obviously. And then he went to go look for it. So I could see like when I get, well, I don't know. I guess I'm not really arguing to the point, but when I get to the point where I would also be going boots on the ground, I could see having the same level of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I guess I would not be fully convinced of it, but I feel like I need that confidence to go. And so maybe that's just like kind of the same threshold that he reached.
Yeah. Let me say more things that I like, because I feel like I'm being a little too harsh here. He mentions the Mad magazine fold-in, which I feel like you should get credit for that idea, Cody. Is that correct? No. Okay.
Oh, no, it was a Discord detective. So I think I talked about it first on our podcast, but I pulled it off of like the Reddit, I think. So someone else's idea.
One idea that he had was typically in the Mad magazine, you put A and B together. There's a little red A arrow and a little red B arrow, and I hadn't considered that. So I really liked his idea of doing that type of fold in, looking for letters on the word search that match. In his case, he does A to A to show where that fold in should be. So I liked that concept a lot. I like that he's trying the Virgineer cipher. And I think there's going to be more ciphers in the follow-up chapters, because he talks about a Railpost cipher. He talks about the Caesar cipher and the joined paths and the John. So I do still like the cipher stuff, even though a lot of people don't, because there's no grand cipher. But I think simple ciphers are still definitely in play. And then he had a section in page 63 called "We Rewire Your Brain" that I liked as well. I'll just read it. I mentioned earlier that reading Ready Player One rewired my brain. The protagonist Parsifal is able to navigate the challenges of Holiday's contest through careful observation, deep analysis, logical deduction, and a thorough understanding of the history surrounding Holiday's past. And lastly, pushing the solve further to find the true answer. So that kind of sparked some interest for me in terms of, this is the past and future box. It is, Jon Collins-Black does talk about his youth, not in detail in this chapter, but I'm wondering if we need to go back to the main text and like learn a little bit more and capture all of his anecdotes from his childhood to see if maybe we attach those to this chapter as well. Just based on that, reading that from Dr. Krypton. Anyway, that was sparked a new idea for me. All right. Anybody else have other comments? This is kind of dragged out very long, as expected.
World's longest news segment.
And then I have
okay.
I have my rant still too, so go ahead.
I have the weight off my shoulders. Thank you very much for that explanation.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying it's wrong. I think it's a low chance that is correct. And I think we all agree at this point that based on his methodology, particularly with the boggling, that you can get a lot of messages out of the word search. And I think it's going to be more constrained than that in terms of the key things needed to solve it.
And even you get a lot of messages out of anagrams when you have leftover letters, and then you do a Google search to figure out what those leftover letters might stand for.
Right. Anyway, my mind is still open. I'm still probably going to check out the other ebooks because as I've said multiple times in the podcast, like I like seeing all solves because there's always little nuggets in there that you can take away from it. There's always positives. I just think it's too complex. Ready for my rant? That wasn't even my rant.
Yes.
All right. So this is the second time I've been trapped by working on disproving things instead of working on my own solves. So, today, instead of working on Pokemon box or working on past and future box, I was working on how do I disprove this solve. The first time it's happened was early on the Discord, probably in the January timeframe. Somebody came on and was talking about doing the cryptogram differently and solving it with AI. And so I spent like a full day disproving what was happening on the Discord in an attempt to try to not let people get distracted by it. And so maybe it's a good deed, but it's kind of a waste of my time. So I think I'm going to be cognizant in terms of not working too hard on disproving other people's solves at this point and just focusing on our own.
Sorry for asking.
Oh, no, it's fine. I mean, there's still value in it, right? Because if it's a true solve, I also wasn't sure, Bryn. I'm like, is it too many coincidences? So then I just had to test it out myself, and so it was still valuable, certainly, but I would just warn others, I guess, 2020 hindsight, maybe don't worry about other people's solves too much in terms of disproving them. If you like them, please follow up with them. But if you don't like it at gut reaction, maybe don't spend time of day on it. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think maybe that kind of goes into, I feel like I've been spending less and less time on Discord just because I think I get pulled in so many directions. Like I love skimming it to see what people are up to, and I do think it sparks some new ideas, which is why I go there to try to get some other perspectives to build off of. But I have learned to very much limit myself because I can see myself get pulled in different directions. And then at the end of the day, when I take a step back, I'm like, I feel really good about the things that I was doing and the things that I was investigating and the themes that I'm making. And so, yeah, it's very easy to get distracted. But all that to be said, I think it's a very good PSA to stay true to yourself.
Jon Collins-Black warned us about this in chapter 5 of the book also, so I did not heed that warning in all cases. All right. Should we move on to Horseshoes and Hand Grenades?
What a fun episode.
All right. Cody, you got Horseshoes and Hand Grenades today.
All right. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible since we're at like an episode's length worth of just news. We're also trying for the first time me sharing a screen directly.
Oh,
so
boy.
We'll see how this goes.
The trap.
What could go wrong?
Nice. I think it's working.
Yep.
Looks good.
All right. So my Horseshoes and Hand Grenades is essentially really just following up on something we were talking about in the previous episode, last week's episode, which was basically linking quotes in the book to lines in Joy's Serenade, because there were some that seemed like very obvious. And so I kind of we talked about those and asked ourselves if there were maybe more. So I started going through that process. And in the process of checking some of those and doing that research, I came up with a couple other kind of Horseshoes and Hand Grenades type ideas as I was putting stuff in. So I got kind of two different tables here. The first one is where I went back through the book. And for now, I just listed every figure, I guess, every person who was quoted in the book. Put it in the order so I can order these if I need to, and then had a couple notes.
Sorry, when you say was quoted in the book, are you saying just the chapter intros or
No.
any of the quotes in the book?
So if there's no notes, pretty much every no notes is a chapter intro. Then, like you can see here, Thomas Aquinas and Art Smith were quoted
sorry.
mid-chapter.
I totally did not look at your notes.
There are a couple of weird ones, like this Son Wai one. That person, he or she, was quoted twice on the same page, but it was like two separate quotes and had like the dash Son Wai at the bottom on both of them. So I put that one in there twice. And there were a handful at the bottom, the part 2 title page, some more of our treasure items, and the postscript all had a handful of different quotes. So I ordered those all up. A couple of interesting ones that I'll draw attention to. There's a direct quote to his book editor. So I kind of just added book editor in brackets there. And then one that really stood out to me, and I didn't notice until kind of going back through and doing all of these, from the top all at once, is the Robert Frost quote is the only one where it says Robert Frost and then says, oh, what was the poem? The Road Less Taken, which something like that. So it says, full quote, Robert Frost, The Road Less Taken. And I have not checked to see if any of these other quotes are pulled from like a direct work of literature or something that you would like add that on the end of it. I would hazard to guess that at least one or two of them would be. So I think it's kind of interesting that he chose to kind of format that quote. I don't even know what that's called. Quote.
Reference
dedication.
Yeah.
Whatever the word is.
Attribution.
Attribution. There's the word I'm looking for. That he formatted that one different than the other ones. So I listed all those, and then I listed out all of the separate lines from Joy's Serenade. And as I was listing out the lines from Joy's Serenade, a couple different thoughts came to mind that I quickly checked too, which is one of them was it seems like the way that some of the lines were broken up kind of were strange to me. And then also, he had a couple of, and here's another word I'm trying to use, conjunctions, right? That's like a they are turns to there. He had a couple of random conjunctions in there that felt a little out of place. I feel like I don't know. This is like one of those like lofty, abstract kind of poems. And I feel like it's kind of a there are kind of poem instead of a there kind of poem. So anyway, yeah, just I guess personal preference. It kind of just felt like some of the syllables were maybe specifically altered within the poem. So those are two things I wanted to check real quick. So I made a separate column in the spreadsheet here that counts how many words are in each of the lines of the poem and how many syllables are in each of the lines of the poem. And so I ended up doing some different sorting and kind of checking out if you could see any like hidden messages if you sorted the lines differently and like rearranged the poem itself, or any hidden messages with like first letters from those lines or capital letters in those lines. I didn't come up with much. I got excited at one point because when I sorted it by one of the two, either words or syllables, and just looked at capital letters down the line, it started out, one of them started out with a word. It wasn't a very interesting word. I think the word was noun, N-O-U-N. But I thought, I don't know, it seemed like it could be instructions coming, but then it just all fell apart. So that was a coincidence there. All right, now to the meat of what I was trying to do in the first place is I started trying to make some of these connections. So I think the two that we had looked at that are like most glaringly obvious, and we talked about in the last episode that made me want to do this in the first place, was the line, use Will's straight edge, being like, easy to argue that would be William of Ockham, who was quoted in the book. And then right after that, as the turning square or any arc, Erdo Rubik. So those are the two that were obvious to us. The one that I'd also very near and dear to my heart is the old "there may be magic in the water, but the pike are rather all around," being Andvari, from Andvari's Ring, which he mentions in the Some More of Our Treasures chapter, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that one. And then I think I had also previously talked about "who want a song to follow."
Mm-hmm.
That line possibly being like a tie with the Pied Piper. And I think the Pied Piper fairy tale was, in fact, I know it was mentioned in the text of the book. So those are the ones we'd kind of talked about previously. So then we've got a couple of new potential connections I found. So the first one is the molten tone of a tune I connected potentially to Edgar Allan Poe. Asterix, because it turns out I could have sworn there was an Edgar Allan Poe quote in the book, and there isn't. I think we just have talked about Edgar Allan Poe a lot, either on the podcast or behind the scenes in the past. But Edgar Allan Poe has a poem called "The Bells." Have we talked about this before? I didn't remember.
I don't think
about
so.
It.
I think we've talked about the golden bug for some reason, but
we had talked about that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Joy's Serenade has the line, "a note, the molten tone of a tune." And Edgar Allan Poe's "The Bells" poem has the line, "from the molten golden notes and all in tune." So that felt like quite a bit of similar language, especially with the like describing music as molten or notes and tunes as molten. That feels like pretty unique. I'd feel a lot better about that if Edgar Allan Poe was actually referenced in the book, and he was not.
Okay.
I think we had some other, like I said, I think we had some other Edgar Allan Poe connections at some point. I'm going to skip that one and save that one for last, the Mary Oliver one. Orison Swett Marden. So he was the guy we talked about during the chapter that he was quoted on. That was like I think like, what's it called? Like New Age philosophy or something. But the one that was like, everything is whatever you believe it is. So just always be like, life's great. I'm great. Everything's doing great. I'm obviously not describing this very well, but like he's like the self-help, like, if you believe it, that's what it is kind of thing.
Manifest.
So I think so I think that like, I don't know, I had myself pretty convinced as I was reading it that would align pretty well with the "never despair, never doubt" line. That's a possible connection. The haiku line, "when close, the haiku curls a little further on," could very obviously connect to the Basho Matsu, who was like the haiku master, and he was quoted in the book.
Okay. This
one's a little bit more loose. The "how high you ever want to be," maybe Michael Jordan, because I feel like, you know, him and jumping and like his whole shoe line with being him in the air. I feel like the
Air Jordan.
Jump Man, Air Jordan. I feel like that is a possible connection there.
Okay.
So a few like decent connections. It's definitely not coming together where there's like, oh my gosh, every line lines up with someone who was quoted.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to find some. And these definitely could just be coincidences. I think none of the ones that I found are better than the Occam's Razor and the Rubik's Cube one.
Okay.
The last one I found was Mary Oliver for the "we may find music in a poem." And the reason that this one was extra interesting to me, and where did I write this down? Not there. One sec. Where did I write this down?
No problem.
Oh, it's somewhere else in there. All right, I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay.
All right. Unhide this tab. This is where I had some notes. Mary Oliver had a poem that fits with that line of Joy's Serenade, but actually fits even better with something else, which is she had a poem called "To Be Human is to Sing Your Own Song."
Oh.
Which I feel like lines up exceptionally well with the last chapter of the book called "Sing Your Own Special Song."
That's right.
So, "Sing Your Own Special Song" is the title of the last chapter of the book. And then Mary Oliver, who was quoted in the book, had a poem called "To Be Human is to Sing Your Own Song." So I thought that one was
Okay.
uh, the most interesting of the connections that I made.
Yeah. Major breakthrough. No,
Solved.
that's cool. That's a really good find. Interesting. Yeah, thank you for doing the legwork on a quick thought that we had in terms of connecting
the Occam's
those,
razor and the Rubik's Cube one just seemed so blatant to me.
Yeah, definitely.
I wasn't willing to just not follow up on it.
Okay.
But nothing else that strong.
I feel like it's one of those things though where they could like continue to trickle in. Like I could see where just taking an initial pass, you got what you did, but then I think there will continue to be other things that uncover themselves as pretty good connections.
And I did definitely find 3 or 4 more that were looser connections, but I got to practice what I preach here after the big monologue I had earlier of like, it needs to be clear. I can't be making connections where like 1,000 other authors or poets would fit the same connections. Like, oh, they use similar flowery metaphorical language as this line of the poem. And it's just want it to be a little more concrete than that. Justifiable.
All right. Any other comments, Bryn, about the author quotes? I think it's a good exercise, and thanks for collecting all the info. If you want to share that, maybe I'll add in the quotes so we have those all in one place as well. It'd be super helpful. All right.
Yeah, you bet.
Should we do mailbag?
Mailbag. We've got mail.
All right. We have a past and future box solve to talk about from TN, and I'm going to pull that up right now. Right. Can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So TN sent this in a few weeks ago, and I've been putting it off. Now we're finally getting to it. So thank you very much, TN, for this past and future box solve for Rentschler Forest Metro Park. So I'll read a bit of this. I'm not going to go through the word search and anagram stuff. You all did a great job of that on your special episode. Thank you. Also recommend Dr. Krypton's book for going through the word search in the beginning as well. There's multiple ways of getting to Ohio as the state. And this is one thing I wanted to point out right away here. I have definitely seen a lot of Ohio discussion, especially early on when the book was released. I don't have a good record of necessarily collecting all of the evidence that points to Ohio as a potential state. So if anybody's willing to make maybe a bulleted list of all the different clues from the word search or the chapter, I think some of the key things are the map with the Tennessee, South Carolina, and North Carolina. The past and future. I know there's a city, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, that the city in Ohio's motto is past and future or something like that. That was like, early on, I was like, oh wow, they've already figured it out.
Yeah.
But I don't have a good summary actually, TN, to be honest, of how you get to Ohio as a state. So TN, or if someone else is willing to maybe put together a quick summary of those clues, I'd like to cover that. Because we do hear a lot about the Lake Tahoe solve, in open forums on the Discord, on some of K-Pro's videos, Calazar's videos, things like that. But I don't know if I've seen a succinct bulleted list of the Ohio clues. That would be helpful to me. From there, what led me to the solve was the most unique word found, lemon. And I somewhat agree with that lemon is one of the less satisfying words in the word search that I've seen like solves that use it well. So I agree with that. I think I understand its usage as a common keyword for the Virgineer cipher, which I also pointed out as something I really like Dr. Krypton talking about, as well as lemon could be the Virgineer key or pointing to a Virgineer cipher. But I wondered if it could be something else, so I googled Lemon, Ohio, and found Lemon Township. And just southwest of Lemon Township is Rentschler Forest Metro Park. Googling Rentschler Forest Metro Park led me to something I found very interesting, a prominent rock. And sure enough, he has a picture of the rock here. Sure, there's a rock referenced in the cryptogram, but there are lots of rocks out there. What makes this rock interesting? And you can see that right here. It's the Chuck Holiday Bridge. And so it is spelled differently, he admits, to the Halliday reference in Ready Player One. But he found that as, being a prominent connection with rock and holiday being mentioned in both the cryptogram and the chapter. So I thought that was pretty cool. So he then has a map of this park, and he has some connections to the word search here. So the Cascades Trail is blue, which he connects to Sapphire. Cascades is also a mountain range, peaks from the word search, in the west from the word search. Rentschler is the westernmost of the 3 parks, and 3 is in the word search. Also, 3 are on special bends or turns. There's also a number of picnic areas, which I think we reference a lot in a lot of these solves, right? As Jon Collins-Black says, you might even discover one during a leisurely afternoon outing in which you enjoy a picnic with a loved one by your side. So picnic is always a good one. And then onto the cryptogram, the rock, which he previously discussed, to field, he says is obvious in red. So I guess when he went boots on the ground, and we have some pictures of that coming up. He's showing from the rock by that Chuck Holiday Bridge up to the fields. So that's what this red line is designating here. Strong, which he represents, or he interprets as a dam, which I think we like from last episode too, talking about Strong as potentially a dam from some of the stuff you showed from Reddit, Cody. To stream. And there's a stream, which he's showing here in green. So from the dam to that rock. So he's kind of making this little search area here. The stream point is kind of ambiguous, but the stream is more or less on the same line, so it doesn't change the line angle sufficiently if you chose a different point. I chose to connect it with the stream under the suspension bridge where the rock is. So sure enough, if we go back up, you can see that this is actually a nice little suspension bridge that this holiday rock is next to. So I was zeroing in between those lines, looking online. It appeared that there was an elevated part in between, which could give an overview of the road, bicycle path, and river, which could be the intended outcome of the quote-unquote count the vehicles part of the text. This could also be part of the cryptogram about arriving where beauty sheens as light reflecting off the river or possibly a view of the stream. Now let's go to the second line of the cryptogram. Past tree and posts to forest green. T is the tall pines. So the T on the map here is the Tall Pines Trail, which he thinks is a connection to the tree. And then there are images online showing how the trees kind of look like posts. Also, the Tall Pines and the Cascades Trail join for part of it. Join the paths, quote unquote, from the corners of the word search. It's a dirt trail, which also connects to the word search, dirt and walk. Going back to the anagram, if I, quote unquote, remain steady on the top side of the Tall Pines Trail, it leads to right into the target area between the lines. So this X is where he's searching and went boots on the ground here. Over under from the cryptogram could be anything. I kind of agree with that. North over from the trail and south under from the road, or 2, something to do with the hiding spot when boots on the ground, or 3, something else I was just missing. I like his style of being skeptical here. In my opinion, I had enough to go boots on the ground, so I headed out on a Friday morning. So this is awesome. He's sending us some pictures from his boots on the ground trip here. So pictures of the tall pines And then from the other angle, looking back, you can see definitely a nice little trail here. And then he said he found the overlook, but thought it had been recently cleared. So this is what he's looking at. There was, however, still a wooded area in the target search area just down the hill from the overlook, so I headed off trail to see what I could find. And he definitely did find some good hiding spots here. He got some pictures of those. And he had some exciting moments. Look at this picture. In these bushes, there's like this slab. Good. Yeah, this is awesome. He said he noticed that from about 30 yards away, but when I got to it, it was just concrete. Sad. But
the way I would have sprinted.
Just meander over. And then he also found this quote-unquote handle right here. So that would make your heart race a little bit, I'm certain. But it was just a piece of metal.
This makes me think, like, we have not got boots on the ground yet, but like the boots on the ground strategizing that I've done, I'm like, if we ever go and we actually find a box, like you have to have a pre-meeting talk, like stay cool. Nobody, you can't celebrate if you find the box. You have to stay cool, conceal it, pack it out, or someone's going to attack you on the way out and try to steal that box from you. Then I just know the reality. I would not be able to keep my cool. See that concrete block from 30 yards away and I'm sprinting.
But it was just a piece of metal with both ends stuck in the mud. I searched the area pretty well and didn't find anything, so I called it a day. I did also hike the full Cascades Trail to see if I found anywhere, quote-unquote, in between the two sides of the trail that looked promising, but I didn't see anything of interest. So, additional note here, I did not look in the middle of the Tall Pines Trail loop, and there's some small chance it was in there. This is what it looks like, and I wasn't interested in fighting through all of this. So, a little bit of underbrush here that's difficult to navigate, certainly. There's never a bad day, boots on the ground, and though I didn't find the box, I enjoyed exploring and the thrill of the chase. So that is
nice.
TN's Solve and Boots on the Ground story. We always are excited to hear about boots on the ground stuff. So thank you very much, TN, for sharing that.
Yeah, I like the pictures, the boots on the ground pictures. That's fun. It paints a nice picture of the boots on the ground day.
Absolutely. All right. Any comments? Additional? I thought that was well put together presentation, much better than many of mine. So,
yeah. I guess I would say personally, I like this all more. The more into the details you get, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think at a very high level, I think some of the keywords were a little too loose.
Mm-hmm.
Like sapphire relating to a trail color, to me that's too loose.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think from the highest level, for me there'd have to be some stronger connections, but as he works his way down into the details, I kind of like how he pulled it all together into his boots on the ground day. Felt well executed and strategic, which I like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just another example of enough trigger points for TN. He decided it was time to go boots on the ground. So,
yeah, I think in particular for me, the holiday rock, which I think was kind of a main focal point for getting to that area. That's a little too much of a stretch for my taste. But no, it looks like a really fun place to go boots on the ground. From the pictures, look like a nice day to be out there. So,
oh yeah,
it is. Every time we see one of these, makes me a little bit more anxious to stop being so skeptical all the time and actually get outside.
Unhealthy skepticism.
It is. I'm definitely on the extreme end of the skeptical spectrum. Like I said, I think that I could have JCB tell me the correct answer and I'd explain to him why it couldn't possibly be that.
Probably.
All right. Should we do a quick Discord detectives here?
Yes.
I fixed it.
Nice.
So we can go like that. All right. So I put this Discord detectives on the outline here, but I didn't do my full amount of research, or I watched it too long ago that I couldn't remember many of the details. But luckily, Bryn saves the day again. Discord detectives today is we want to point out a new video series that's on YouTube by Habeas Treasurus. He is a gentleman that is talking about a lot of details about his Pokemon box solve. And Bryn, I think as you mentioned, he's really focused on the New Orleans area and trying to connect clues from the Pokemon chapter to very specific places around New Orleans. So that's about all I can say. There's some things I like about it, some things I don't. But I think it's a really good exercise, as usual, in learning about people's thought processes. And there are very creative connections being made.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I would say in general, I really enjoyed the videos. I think he has good perspectives, like Blake was saying, for prompting new ways of thinking, which I always appreciate. He is very focused on New Orleans, like Blake just said, which I don't know. I guess I'm not sold on, but I think people have also been asking me to like spill more of like my work on Pokemon Box, and I guess what I would say is that I have gone through and I've like had a couple solves here and there, but again, skeptical. I'm like, it doesn't check all the boxes for everything that I've identified as a clue. So if it doesn't check all the boxes, I don't think it's the solve, and so I'm not going to go. And so then I kind of pull back, and I'm at a place now where I am very much focused on like identifying and feeling very confident in all the themes and the categories for the clues within the chapter. So identify all the clues, fit them all into different themes, and then figure out what the overlap of those themes are within the chapter. So I'm just like very much at the foundation and back to basics on Pokemon Box, and I've been spending a ton of time doing a lot of homework and background research on just making sure I'm building my solve off of the correct foundation. So all that to be said is, while I don't feel super excited about the box being in New Orleans, I guess I don't have any reasons at this point to say that. Well, why? It very well could be in New Orleans. And he has some great arguments for why that could be. In a video that I just watched, I don't know, a couple days ago, one thing that I really liked that he said is he was going through the part 2 introduction and talking through his approach of how he thought clues were integrated into the part 2 introduction and how those tied into the 4 separate boxes, which I 100% agree that there are clues to the part 2 boxes that are specific to certain part 2 boxes in the part 2 introduction. I guess what I would say I disagree with is that he thought there was only 2 approaches to how the clues would be aligned in the introduction to the boxes. So either like the first 2, I think there was 12 paragraphs in that introduction. So he was trying to like break it out in 3 ways that by box, 3 clues per box. So he was saying either it has to go like, you know, the first 2 paragraphs go with the first box, the second 2 paragraphs go with the second box, or that they would kind of alternate through 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So he was trying to make the clues fit into the boxes those ways. So he walked through that approach, which could be it. I guess what I feel very confident in clues in part 2 introduction, I feel like I have very confidently identified the ones that go with Pokemon Box and they don't fit that pattern, either one of those patterns. So I would say my approach is that there are certainly clues in that introduction, but they're just kind of random. You'll know what box they go with once you've done enough work on the box to identify, would be my stance. But as part of that conversation, I got a sticky note of notes. He called out the quote, "The thought of this task made my head spin." He was tying that to the Pokemon box, which I agree.
Huh.
Primarily because in the Pokemon box chapter, we have the quote, "Head on a spinner." When JCB steps out into the street from the hotel, his head was on a spinner.
Head on a swivel.
Sorry. Thank you. Head on a swivel. So it happens when I write down my my quotes on a sticky note from memory. So we have we have making his head spin and head on a spinner, head on a swivel. So I think between the two of those, it's like, well, that certainly seems like those are both then speaking to the Pokemon box. So his connection to that was, and I also like this, that he said he's bringing in Portland, Maine, which I would agree has to be a clue. Like, why else is he calling out this wedding in Portland, Maine? He said
because that's where he was when Pokemon Go was launched.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't think he would I don't know. I think he's I personally think that is a clue. Especially within the theme of the chapter. For various reasons, Portland sounds like other things. There's other places named Portland. It fits in with wordplay. There is a famous lighthouse in Portland, Maine called, the Portland Headlight. So if you think about a light spinning in a lighthouse, headlight, head on a swivel, head making my head spin. So that was his connection to Portland, Maine, with that original quote from the part 2 introduction, which I liked. That was a new thought for me. And
how does that connect to New Orleans, or that's just like a pinpoint that you can say this part of the introduction is related to Pokemon?
He had a lighthouse landmark in his solve within New Orleans. So that necessarily was not the direction I would go with it, but it fits very nicely within his solve. And I think he has a very interesting solve that I would recommend going through and getting some really good perspective from his New Orleans perspective on how to interpret these clues. So,
yes, we'll post a link to that channel down below as well. I've got a lot of things to put in the video description today.
Yeah, so I mean, like Blake started out with, there's things I like, there's things I don't like as much. But I'm sure people say the same thing about us. It's just about gathering different perspectives.
Yes, you can be critical of ourselves as well, certainly. We don't have a box. All right, cool. Thank you, Bryn. Thank you to Abius Treasurous. High production value in his videos. So he has a lot of graphics and video clips and things like that I like. So very worthwhile watch. So check it out. All right.
And they're concise.
Yes. We are less concise than he is.
40-minute news segment.
A concise clue of the day. All right. Coincidence of the day. Speaking of. Cody.
All right. Coincidence of the day. This is another one inspired by last episode. I was quite inspired last episode to dig into a few things. It goes referencing the purple picture with Mewtwo in the Pokemon box. I've been on record, and it was a big ordeal when I said that I think that Mewtwo's, so far to date, Mewtwo is the only thing I see in that photo that I'm like, I agree that this is a thing. I think all the other ones are Rorschach tests.
Rorschach tests.
Rorschach tests. Trust me, I'm a genius.
You're a language expert. Also, oh yeah, sorry. I need to go back. I mean, people have already written the angry emails probably, but it's not a conjunction when you have an apostrophe. It's a contraction.
That's it. Oh,
So if people
I think
waited till the end of the episode, you don't have to write in anymore. Okay. Sorry.
Oh, no.
I interrupted you.
I knew that. All right.
Everyone trust us.
MewTwo. So basically, because I think so far to me, the only thing in that picture that I feel good about is the Mewtwo itself. We kind of talked about how it feels like that Mewtwo needs to be important somehow. It also takes up, a lot of real estate on the page. So I was kind of reverse engineering in my mind, what could this Mewtwo be used for that would feel satisfying? Would be like a satisfying use for the Mewtwo. Right now, it's like obviously very abstract. He doesn't even reference Mewtwo in the text, I believe. And then randomly at the end of the chapter has this strange optical illusion AR photo.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed to find a way to make it less abstract in my mind. I want to make it as less as far from abstract as possible. So I decided what if he's quite literally, in the picture, I should mention, in case anyone doesn't know, Mewtwo is kind of like pointing, and that's consensus on what he's doing is pointing. So I was like, what if he is literally, that is what he's there for, is to be this pointer pointing at something, and take that as literally as possible. Obviously, we've been over this. I don't think there's anything else in that photo that stood out to me that he would be pointing at that I'm a firm believer in. So okay. I thought, let's augment reality a little bit here, go the different dimensions.
Okay.
And I thought, let's take a push pin and push through like the tip of his finger and see if there's other places within that part 2 Pokemon chapter that he could be pointing to.
Interesting.
So I did that, and I looked at, went through a couple different words, a couple different letters. I didn't write them down. There's only like 5 or 6 of them. I can't remember what they are now. This was a few days ago. Nothing that jumped out to me as significant. The only thing that did jump out to me as significant, and you can pull up the pictures if you want real quick.
Okay. So did you damage your book?
I did. A pinhole into my book, and you'll see in this photo. Wow.
Our first edition?
Our first edition book. That has a lot of your highlights and underlines in. Yes. I put a pinhole in it.
Everything's going to be fine when we find a box.
You can see there the Mewtwo and my push pinhole in there. I should also mention that I liked this approach at the time because I think that it would work on the ebooks too. I think if you even just held your pen where the pointer as a scroll pages, that it'd be like he's pointing towards something specific.
Interesting.
I think it would scale correctly. So if you want to open pin 2, this is kind of the only other thing that I found interesting, because the words and the letters that it went through weren't very interesting, but it does point. Wait for it. Straight at the 3 on the Froakie hand that people have been wondering what it means. So at first I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's an already established point of interest within the chapter, right? Is this 3 on Froakie's hand. And now you've got this ultra important Mewtwo at the very end. Potentially, if my theory were to be correct, doing this augmented reality, multiple dimensions pointing directly to that. So yeah, I thought that was kind of cool, and I thought it was a cool idea, but ultimately classifying it as the coincidence of the day, I don't think it has any merit to it. And I think that the pointing to the 3 on the Froakie hand is interesting, but it doesn't really gain us anything. Because like I said, the only reason it was interesting is because it was already a point of interest. And so we don't need to expend all of this real estate in the book to point to something that people are already looking at anyway. We don't really gain anything from that. So yeah, I classified it as a coincidence of the day, but I thought it was a cool idea.
Super cool idea. I like how you mentioned it was a 3D approach. Yeah, very creative.
It would have been very exciting if the pinpoint came out on the top of the Froakie finger pointing and they were like at the same spot.
Yeah.
It would have been a thrill. It would have. I like the idea though. Despite poking a hole in our precious book. I think that's good.
It's funny, I didn't even really think about the theme behind it really until I was just explaining it right now. That it kind of does, in a way, kind of match that augmented reality, multiple dimension kind of idea. Skip across pages like that. So,
right. Well, thank you for your sacrifice of the book for science. All right. Any parting thoughts? We went a little long this time, as expected. So, hearing none. Thanks, everybody. So. Thanks for everybody. We will see you next week. Happy hunting.
Searching for clues, let's find you.